We need the house for the kids, Mom, and you'd take the downstairs room. It just makes sense.
Looking for something, Garrett?
Just admiring the craftsmanship.
Keep fighting, and you might not see those kids again.
You should go now. My daughter's voice cracked through the phone, and I could hear her husband breathing right behind her shoulder. We filed the petition this morning, she said. The court date is coming, Mom, so stop fighting us. And I stood there on a balcony 2 states away, looking at an ocean my late husband never got to see, and I said the calmest sentence of my whole life. There is nothing left to take. I sold the house yesterday. And the silence on that line was the sound of every plan they had falling straight through the floor. My name is Maren Holloway. I am 66 years old, and for 38 years I was a nurse. So when my own family decided I was fading, I already knew exactly how that story was supposed to end. They just never expected me to rewrite it. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments. And please, stay with me until the end. It started on an ordinary Tuesday, with chamomile cooling in my cup and the smell of thyme coming off the stove. My daughter Lissa stood in the middle of my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had packed her school lunches for 12 years, and she folded her arms in that particular way she has done since she was a teenager, the way that means she has already decided, and she is only waiting for the rest of us to catch up. Mom, she said, we need the house for the kids. She did not ask me. That is the part I need you to understand right from the start. She did not say, would you consider, or how would you feel, or could we sit down and talk about it? She announced it. Like I had already agreed in some conversation I was not invited to, like I was already a little bit gone. The kids need room, she went on. Ren and Theo cannot keep sharing forever. You have got 3 bedrooms upstairs you do not even use. It just makes sense, Mom. You would take the downstairs guest room. Less stairs for you anyway. Less stairs. I climb those stairs every single night without touching the rail, but I let that one go by for the moment. Her husband Garrett came in behind her, hands shoved in his pockets, doing this slow, lazy scan of my walls like a man pricing out drywall. He stopped near the hallway closet where I keep my paperwork. He is always stopping near my paperwork. Now here is the thing they did not know. The thing nobody in that room understood. I spent 38 years on geriatric floors. 38 years. And I have watched this exact scene play out more times than I can count, in hospital hallways and family meeting rooms, and on the phone at 2 a.m. I have watched perfectly sharp old people get talked about in the third person while they sat right there in the chair. I have heard that soft voice come out, the one that says, we just want what is best for you, while somebody slides a clipboard across a table. I know the script by heart. I helped 100 families read it the right way, and God forgive me, I watched a few of them read it the wrong way and take everything a person had left. So when Lissa said the house and Garrett drifted toward my filing cabinet, something in me went very quiet and very clear. Not panic, clarity. Cold and clean, the way the air goes right before snow. We would just need you to sign a couple of things, Lissa said, lighter now, like it was nothing at all. Transfer it into our names, just for the legal side of things. You would still live here, obviously. Just sign a couple of things. At 66, I know the difference between paper and power. I learned it the hard way, holding the hands of people who learned it too late, people who signed a couple of things and then spent the rest of their lives asking permission to live in rooms they had paid for. I did not answer her. Instead, I reached for the old steel stopwatch I keep on the windowsill, the one I used for 40 years to count pulses, beat by beat on wrists that were scared and wrists that were giving out. I ran my thumb over the worn casing the way other women touch a rosary. Garrett cleared his throat. We are just thinking about the future, Maren, he said. The future. Funny how the future they kept describing, never once my voice anywhere in it. That night, after they had gone and the house was quiet, I did what I had done 10,000 times at the end of a long shift. I took out a notebook and I started a chart, not on a patient, on them, date, time they arrived, what was said and who said it, the word future, the word sign. The way Garrett stood next to my cabinet with his back half turned. Old habit, charting. You write down what you see so that later, when somebody tries to tell you it did not happen that way, you have got the truth sitting right there in ink. I underlined the date and I closed the cover, and I want to be honest with you. My hands were steady. That surprised even me. Before I tell you what they did to me, I need you to understand who I was before they decided who I had become. Because that is the part they forgot, and it is the part that saved me. I married Walt Holloway in the spring of 1985, and I want to tell you he swept me off my feet. But the truth is plainer and better than that. He was steady. In a life that had not given me much steady, that man was a floor you could stand on. He drove a delivery route for 30 years and never once made it sound like less than it was. And every evening of our marriage, he would ask me about my shift, really ask, and he would listen to the whole answer, even the parts with the long medical words in them, even the parts where somebody had died. And I needed to say it out loud to a person who loved me so I could carry it home and finally set it down. I started nursing in 1982, 22 years old, terrified, my hands shaking the first time I had to find a vein on a man older than my own father. By the end of it, I could read a room full of frightened relatives the way a sailor reads weather coming in off the water. And the floor I gave my whole life to, the one most nurses run hard in the other direction from, was geriatrics, the old ones, the fading ones. The ones everybody else had quietly started talking about in the past tense while they were still right there in the bed, still listening, still a whole entire person inside a body that had simply begun to betray them. That is where I learned the script, not out of any book. From standing in the doorway of room after room after room and watching it happen with my own two eyes. A son would arrive from out of state, full of guilt, all dressed up as concern, and inside of an hour he would be using that soft, careful voice, the one that starts every sentence with, "We just think it is time." I watched families love their parents and rob them blind in the very same breath and never once feel the difference between the two. And I watched the rare old soul who saw it coming and got their affairs in order first, quiet and early, and kept their dignity right to the very last day. I swore to myself, standing in those doorways year after year, that I would be that second kind. I just never once imagined I would have to be it against my own daughter. Walt and I had the dream, the way couples do, the little place on the water. He kept a folder of fishing spots clipped out of magazines, the corners gone soft from all his handling. We were going to go the year. He turned 65. He made it to 62. His heart stopped on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, somewhere between the kitchen and the back door, and the man who had been my floor for 38 years was simply gone, just like that, and the dream went into a drawer along with his watch and his soft-cornered folder of fishing spots. So when Lissa stood in my kitchen and decided I was fading, she was not looking at a frail old woman who would be easy to move along. She was looking at 38 years of doorways. She just had no earthly idea what I had been doing in every single one of them. I had been watching, and I had been taking notes. 3 days later, a beige sedan pulled into my driveway, and it was too clean to be lost. The woman who got out had a folder under her arm and a smile so polished it caught the sun. "Mrs. Holloway," she said, "I am Corinne. I work with your daughter and son-in-law. They mentioned you might be weighing your options on the property." Options. There it was again. That stretchy word, the one that can mean just about anything and almost always means somebody else has already made plans for you. I was not weighing anything, I told her, and I kept my gardening gloves on the whole time I said it, because there is a certain quiet power in not stopping what you are doing for a person you never once asked to come. "Of course," she said, the smile flickering but not dying. "These people are trained for resistance, you understand. I just figured a quick valuation might be helpful. The market is really strong right now. Family transfers are super common these days. Family transfers. Like the house was a casserole getting passed on down the table." "I did not invite you," I said. Plain as that. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Garrett told me you were open to a conversation. And there it was, not even hidden. My son-in-law was out scheduling appraisals on a house that had my name on the deed, and my husband's ashes scattered under the maple in the back. I held her eyes long enough to make her uncomfortable, and then I said, "My daughter speaks for herself. She does not speak for me, and neither do you." I sent her on her way. But before her car had even hit the road, the screen door creaked behind me, and there was Garrett, who I had not heard come in, standing maybe a foot too close to my filing cabinet again, with the drawer sitting open about an inch. "Looking for something?" I asked. "Just admiring the craftsmanship," he said. "That cabinet is pine from a hardware store. There is no craftsmanship to it at all." But I smiled because I was charting, not fighting. I went into the kitchen and I wrote it all down. Corinne, the beige sedan. The phrase opened to a conversation. The cabinet drawer, open 1 inch. I dated it. And I want you to notice something here, because it is going to matter a great deal later. I was not fighting yet. I was collecting. A good nurse never argues with the chart. She just makes sure the chart is honest, and then she waits. I figured they would come at the house. I did not figure they would come at me. And that was the one thing I should have seen coming and didn't, and I will own that. Because the next move was not a realtor and it was not a contract. It was quieter than that and a good deal meaner. Every second Thursday, I have coffee with a group of women I have known for years. 6 of us, all of us between 60 and 78, sharp as tacks, the kind of women who have buried husbands and raised hell and run church-bake sales like military operations. That Thursday, it was over at Dot's place, and I brought the lemon bars like I always do. And something was off the second I walked in. You learn to read a room when you have spent your whole life walking into rooms where somebody has just gotten bad news. The way Carol looked at me a half second too long, the way the conversation sort of repaired itself when I sat down, smoothed itself right over, like they had all been talking about something and folded it up quick. It was Bernie who told me straight, because Bernie always does. Bernie Acker and I worked the same hospital floor for 2 solid decades. She found me over by the coffee maker, and she said it low. "Marin, somebody has been talking about you." "Talking how?" I asked. "Your girl, Lissa." She called Carol, and I think she called Dot too. Real concerned, real sweet about the whole thing. Saying you have been overwhelmed lately, forgetting things. That she worries about you living alone, managing that big house at your age. Bernie's jaw was tight as a fist. I told Carol it was a load of garbage. But Marin, it is out there now. People are going to start watching you for it. And that right there is the most dangerous part of this whole business, and I need you to hear me, because it is the part most people miss until it is far too late. They do not have to prove you are slipping. They only have to get enough people wondering. Plant the word overwhelmed in enough kitchens. Plant forgetful at enough coffee tables. And after a while, you do not have to build the case anymore at all. The case builds itself. Every time I misplaced my keys now, somebody would file it away. Every time I told a story twice, somebody would nod and think, oh. I drove home that day, and I will tell you the truth. I felt it land. I felt smaller. For the first time since Lissa stood in my kitchen, I was not angry. I was scared. Not scared they were right. Scared they would not have to be. Scared that 38 years of being the steady one, the competent one, the woman whole families called when everything was coming apart, could get erased by a couple of phone calls and one soft little word like concerned. I sat in my own driveway with the engine ticking down, and I did not go inside for a long while. The maple was dropping its early leaves over the spot where Walt is. 3 years gone now, and I would have given a great deal to have him on that porch with his coffee, telling me I was being paranoid in that way that always made me feel safe instead of small. But he was not there, and the house was too quiet. And somewhere across town, my own daughter was on the telephone, telling people I could not be trusted to remember my own life. That night, I opened the notebook again. New entry, whisper campaign, the date, Bernie's warning, the word overwhelmed, used at least twice that I knew of. I sat at the kitchen table a long time after, and I am not too proud to tell you a couple of tears got on the page. I let them. Then I wiped my eyes, and I underlined one word at the bottom, hard enough to nearly go through the paper. Document. Because here is what they forgot about me. They saw a 66-year-old woman in a too big house. They saw the stairs and the gray hair and the word age. What they did not see, what they could not be bothered to remember, was that I had stood at the bedside of the dying and held the line through other people's very worst days and kept my hands steady through every bit of it. I move a little slower in the mornings now, fine. But slow is not the same as gone. And a woman who has spent her whole life charting the truth does not panic when somebody tries to lie about her. She just gets very, very careful. And careful, I was about to remind the both of them, can be a far more dangerous thing than loud. For about a week after that, I did the thing nurses are best at and most people are worst at. I waited. I watched. I let them think the whisper had done its work, and I was sitting at home getting smaller by the day. Then on a Sunday, they came for dinner, the whole crew, and Garrett left his jacket on the back of my kitchen chair. I want to be careful how I tell this because at the time I believed it was nothing but carelessness. A man tossing his coat over a chair, the kids running through the house, Lissa fussing over whether the chicken had come out dry. Ordinary family chaos. The jacket sat there through the whole meal, and after they left, I picked it up to hang it by the door so it would not get forgotten, and his phone buzzed in the pocket. I am not a snoop. 38 years of other people's private charts, and I never once carried a story out of a room that was not mine to carry. But the screen was face up, and the message was sitting right there on it, and you do not get to unread a thing once you have read it. It was from somebody saved in his phone as Royce. And it said, in that flat, ugly way these things always say it, that the clock was running, that Garrett knew what happened to men who kept missing, and that he needed the rest of it by the end of the month, or they would be having a very different kind of conversation. I stood in my own kitchen holding another grown man's jacket, and I felt the whole thing tilt sideways and then snap into focus, clean and terrible, the way a blurry X-ray sharpens up the second you finally hold it to the light. It was never about the kids. It was never about Ren needing her own room or Theo getting bigger or stairs being hard on my knees. My son-in-law was into somebody named Royce for money he did not have, the kind of money you do not borrow from any bank. And there was exactly one asset in this whole family big enough to dig him out of that hole. A paid-off house, my house. I sat down slow at the table, and the thing that hit me hardest was not the anger, it was Lissa. Because all at once 100 little things lined up and made sense. The tightness around her eyes these last months. How she never quite met my look whenever Garrett got going about the future. How she would flinch just a hair every time he pushed too hard. My daughter was not a greedy woman trying to take her mother's house. My daughter was a scared woman married to a drowning man, and she was helping him hold my head under the water because she did not know any other way to keep them all afloat. And that somehow is worse. Greed I could have hated clean. This I had to grieve. I hung the jacket back by the door, exactly where it had been. I did not say a single word to anyone. I got out my notebook, and under a fresh date I wrote one line, Royce, debt, end of the month. And then I sat there a long time. Because for the first time I understood I was not fighting a plan anymore. I was fighting a deadline. And a man with a deadline does desperate things. I would love to tell you I went to bed that night steady as ever. I did not. Because here is what nobody warns you about. When enough people decide you are slipping, a little piece of you starts checking. You cannot help it. They hand you the doubt, and your own mind picks it up just to turn it over, just to have a look. And that is the most dangerous moment of the whole thing. The next morning, I could not find my car keys. I tore the whole kitchen apart, checked my coat, checked the bowl by the door, checked the ignition like a fool, twice. 20 minutes gone. And the longer I looked, the louder this little voice got, this cold little voice that sounded an awful lot like Garrett, going, see, found them finally in the pocket of yesterday's cardigan, right where any tired woman on God's earth leaves her keys. But the voice did not quit. That same afternoon, a clinic called to confirm an appointment I never made. A cognitive assessment, the girls said, real friendly. Booked under your name, your daughter set it up. Just routine. Routine. There is nothing routine about a healthy woman getting scheduled for a memory test she did not ask for. That is not medicine. That is paperwork wearing a stethoscope. I have seen it from the inside more times than I can stand to remember. You get the test on the calendar, And then, no matter how it comes out, you have got a date and a chart and a doctor's name attached to the question. And a date and a chart and a doctor's name is the whole ball game once you are standing in front of a judge. I hung up the phone and I stood in my kitchen, and I will be honest with you, because what is the point of telling any of this if I am going to lie in the middle of it? For about an hour that night, I wondered if they were right. I sat in Walt's old chair in the dark, with his fishing gear still stacked in the corner where he left it 3 years ago. And I thought, what if I am losing it? What if the keys are the start of something? What if these kids are the only ones brave enough to say the thing out loud? And then I got mad, not at them, at myself for biting down on the hook, because I sat there and I made myself do exactly what I would have told any patient's family to do. I looked at the actual evidence. I lost my keys for 20 minutes. Show me one person over 40 who has not. The only difference, the single difference, is that nobody is trying to drag those people in front of a judge over it. They were not pointing at my keys because they were worried about my mind. They were pointing at my keys because they needed my house. The forgetting was never the problem they were trying to solve. It was the story they were trying to sell. So I reached over and I turned the lamp on. Funny how much that helps. And I said it out loud to the empty room sitting there in Walt's chair. I am not the one who is confused here. I did not underline a thing that night. I did not need to. I just slept, and in the morning my hands were steady again, and I knew exactly who I needed to call. Bernie Acker came over the next morning before I had even finished the first pot, because that is the kind of friend Bernie is. You call her and say nothing is wrong, and she shows up an hour later with a coffee cake and the certain knowledge that something is very wrong indeed. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Lissa had announced she needed my house, and I told her all of it. The appraiser, the whisper, the jacket, and the man named Royce. The appointment I never made. Bernie listened the way only another nurse can listen, without one gasp or one interruption, just nodding slow, filing each piece away in that steel-trap mind that ran a 40-bed floor for 20 years without ever once losing the thread. When I was done, she was quiet a minute. Then she said, "You remember Eleanor Pratt?" I did. We had nursed Eleanor's mother years back, and we had both watched Eleanor's own children do this exact thing to her when her time came. The soft voices, the paperwork, the quiet repositioning of a sharp old woman into a smaller and smaller room until there was nothing left of her decisions at all. "I think about her all the time," I said. "So do I," Bernie said. "And here is what I keep landing on, Marin. Eleanor did not lose because she was weak. She lost because she was alone and she was polite, and she waited for them to do the right thing because she could not believe her own babies would do the wrong one. You are not alone, and you stopped being polite about 30 years ago." She reached across the table, and she put her dry, warm hand over mine, the way we used to do for the frightened ones. "So you are not going to lose this. You hear me. You are going to do the cold, smart thing while you still can, and you are going to let me help you do it." And then she did the thing that mattered most. She gave me a name. Dr. Okafor Neurology 2 towns over, somebody she trusted, somebody who did not owe one single favor to one living person in my family. "Get in front of him," she said. "Get it on paper. Their kind of paper only beats your kind of paper if you do not have any of your own." We laughed some too before she left. We always do. 2 old women at a kitchen table laughing about getting old while one of them fought for her own family. It is not gallows humor when it is your whole life, I have decided. It is just the sound 2 people make so the dark does not get the last word. Bernie hugged me hard at the door and she said, "You call me at 3 in the morning if you need to. You understand. I have got nothing but time and a phone right by the bed." And driving off, she tapped the horn twice, the way she has for 20 years. I stood in the doorway and I did not feel alone anymore. I felt armed, so I made the appointment myself, with my own doctor, of my own choosing, paid out of my own account, and I drove myself there no less. And I sat through every last piece of it. The questions, the drawing of the clock face, the lists you are meant to hold in your head and repeat back, all of it. I had given that exact test to 1,000 frightened families over the years, sitting on the other side of the desk with the kind eyes. Strangest thing in the whole world to be the one in the chair for once. When it was done, Dr. Okafor took his glasses off and he told me what I already knew but needed in writing. There is nothing wrong with you, Mrs. Holloway. Your cognition is fully intact. He said it kind but plain, and then he tilted his head and he said the thing that mattered most of all. Whoever is telling you otherwise, you might want to ask yourself what they stand to gain from it. I walked out of that office with a folder, and that folder changed everything. Because do you see what I had just done? They wanted a medical record proving I was fading. So I went out and got myself a medical record proving I was not dated and signed before they ever got theirs. The exact weapon they were busy building, I built first, and I built it pointed the other way down the hall. That is not luck. That is 38 years of knowing that in a fight like this one, the chart wins every single time. And whoever charts first is the one holding the cards. From there, I went to see a lawyer, Adrian Foss, an office that smelled like old coffee and printer toner, no flashy diplomas on the wall, just a man who listened the way good people do, all the way to the end of your sentence before he opened his mouth. I laid it all out, the house, the appraiser, the whispers, the appointment I never made, the word future used over and over, the man named Royce. He did not flinch at a single piece of it. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair and he said, "You are not confused, Mrs. Holloway. You are being maneuvered. And there is a world of difference between those two things, and that difference is the whole entire case." He walked me through what I could do: trusts, powers of attorney, protective filings, the slow legal armor a person can put on piece by piece. And then near the end, almost gentle, he set one more thing down on the table between us. Quiet, heavy, the kind of idea that just sits in a room after a man has said it out loud. He told me there was a way to make the whole fight disappear, not win it, end it. And I sat with that a moment, turning it over, feeling my own pulse pick up the way it does right before you make a decision you cannot take back. I did not say yes in that office. I told him I needed to think on it, but something had already settled in me, low and certain. They thought they were closing in on me. They had no idea that I had just stopped running, and a woman who has stopped running is the most dangerous person in any room because now, finally, she gets to choose the ground. Here is a thing they do not teach you in nursing school, but you learn it anyway, standing in 100 family meetings with a box of tissues on the table. The fastest way to make people stop watching you is to give them exactly what they came to take. Hand it right over. Smile while you do it. People relax the very second they think they have won, and a relaxed person stops paying attention, and a person who has stopped paying attention is a person you can move around the board at will. So I stopped fighting. Out loud anyway. When Lissa called 2 days later, I could hear her testing the water before she even got the words out. That careful sing-song lift in her voice she has had since she was small and wanted something she was not sure she would get. "Mom," she said, "I have been thinking and I do not want us to be at war. Have you given any more thought to maybe being practical about the house?" And I let my voice go soft. I let it go warm even. I told her she might have a point. I told her I had been so busy digging my heels in that maybe I had not really stopped to look at it straight, and maybe it was time I looked at my options. I used their own word right back at her, options, and I felt it work. I felt her whole body let go through the phone, that rope going slack, that breath she had been holding for a week sliding right out of her. "That is all I wanted, Mom," she said, and the relief in it nearly broke my heart because it was real. "That is all. Just for you to be open." Open. I sat there at my kitchen table with the phone warm against my ear, and I thought about the woman I had raised. All those years I sat her down and taught her, we do not lie in this family. The truth is the one thing nobody can ever take from you. And here I was, 66 years old, lying to my own daughter smooth as anything, and not feeling 1 ounce of shame about it. Because I had figured something out, sitting in Walt's chair those long nights. There is lying that takes from people, and there is lying that keeps you from being taken, and they are not the same animal at all. One is a knife you put into somebody. The other is a door you shut so the cold cannot get in. And a woman my age, who has given and given and given for 40 years, has finally earned the right to know the difference. and to use it without apologizing to a soul. They had no earthly idea. Garrett came by that week, and I could see it on him the moment he walked in, the swagger back in his shoulders, that loose, easy way a man moves when he believes the hard part is behind him. He sat down on my couch and spread himself out wide across it, an arm thrown over the back like he was already trying it on for size. He got to talking timelines, interest rates, how clean this could all go now that I was being reasonable. Reasonable. I turned that word over while he talked. To Garrett, reasonable meant beaten. It meant the old woman had finally run out of fight and laid herself down. To me, it meant something else entirely. It meant I had gotten quiet. And I have learned over a long life that quiet is not the same as surrendered. Quiet is what a thing gets right before it moves. A nurse gets quiet right before she tells a family the news. A storm gets quiet right before it turns. I had gotten quiet because I had finally stopped shouting at the wall and started to aim. Because here's what that man sprawled out on my couch did not know. In the top drawer of my desk, there was a folder from Dr. Okafor that said in plain medical language, there was not one thing wrong with my mind. And there was a lawyer who had shown me a door I had not known was even in the room. They thought I was folding. The truth is I was loading. And there is nothing on God's green earth more dangerous than a woman the whole world has decided to stop watching. The dinner was their idea, and I knew the second she suggested it exactly what it was. Let us just sit down together like a family, Lissa said. No pressure. No paperwork. I nearly laughed out loud at that last part. No paperwork. We will see about that, I thought. She wanted it at her house this time, and that told me plenty too. You do not invite somebody onto your own floor unless you want the advantage of it. I will not waste your time describing the room. What matters is what happened inside of it. The table was set too nice, the good candles already lit, and the whole house had that held breath stillness that tells you the meal is not the point of the meal. Wren came running and threw her arms around my waist and held on a beat too long, and Theo would not lift his eyes up off his plate, and that alone told me everything, because children read a room faster than any grown person, since nobody has taught them yet to pretend they cannot. Dinner started easy on purpose. School, soccer, some neighbor's new deck. Lissa kept refilling my glass, too attentive, her own barely touched, and I let her and I waited because I knew the easy part was just the throat clearing before the real thing. It was Garrett who reached for it first. He set his fork down, careful against his plate, and he cleared his throat, and he said, "All right, let us just put it all on the table." And on cue, like the two of them had rehearsed it in the car. On the way over, Lissa reached down beside her chair and brought up a slim folder and slid it across the wood toward me. "It is just a draft, Mom," she said, soft as she could make her voice. "Nothing binding. We just wanted you to see it." I did not touch it. I left it sitting there next to my fork, and I looked at her, and I asked, even though God knows I already knew, "What is it?" "A transition plan," Garrett said. "It protects everybody." Protects. There was that word again. They kept laying it down over everything like a blanket, and every single time, underneath the blanket, there was a hand reaching down into my pocket. I put 2 fingers on the edge of the folder, and I opened it slow, the way you open a chart when you already half know what the labs are going to say. And I read, "Transfer of ownership, my name coming off, theirs going on," and buried down in the middle of it, soft and quiet so a tired person might skim right past it, a clause. Conditional residency. My right to keep living in the house I had paid off with 40 years of double shifts made conditional. Conditional on their say-so. And lower still, the line that put real ice in my stomach. Capacity affirmation. A neat little spot on the page where, with the right doctor and the right signature, my own competence could be set up on the table and then quietly swept right off of it. And here is where I want to slow all the way down, because this was the moment the whole thing turned, and it did not turn on the paperwork at all. It turned on a pair of hands. I looked up from that folder and I looked at my daughter, and I made myself ask the only question that actually mattered. I did not ask it loud. I asked it quiet, the way you ask a frightened peach, a real question underneath all the others. "Lissa," I said, "look at me. Is this what you want?" And she could not do it. She could not look at me. Her eyes went to the candles, to her own plate, to Garrett, to the window, everywhere in that whole room except her own mother's face. And her hands, which were resting on the edge of that folder, had started to shake, just barely, just enough. And the instant she felt me watching them, she pulled into her lap and pressed them flat against her legs to make them stop. I want you to hold on to that. Her hands. A greedy woman does not shake. A greedy woman looks you dead in the eye and tells you it is for the best. Whatever was sitting across that table from me, drowning in candlelight and not able to meet my eyes, it was not greed. It was something a great deal sadder than greed. Remember her hands. They are going to matter more than you can possibly know right now. You brought this to dinner, I said. I let it sit there in the quiet. We did not want it to feel confrontational, she said, and her voice was thin. You do not take the confrontation out of a thing, I said, by serving it with chicken and the good candles. And Garrett, who could feel it slipping away from him, leaned in. Marin, he said, this is generous. You stay right in the home. Nobody is putting you out. We handle everything, the maintenance, the taxes, all of it. You do not lift a finger. Most people your age would be grateful. Grateful. There is a word that has been used to rob more old people than any crowbar ever forged. I closed the folder. I laid my hand flat on top of it. And I said the one word I had been carrying all night, holding it under my tongue like a smooth river stone. No. It landed harder than even I expected. The whole table went still. Lissa blinked fast. No to this draft, she started. We can change anything you want. Just tell us what. No, I said, to any version of this. There is no version where I sign away my own home and let the two of you write a clause about my own mind into the contract. There is no wording, no candle, no chicken dinner on this earth that makes that all right. You are being impossible, Garrett said, and the warmth was finally cracking right off his voice. You are letting your pride put your own grandchildren out of a stable home. And I looked right at him when he said grandchildren, because that was the exact moment he reached for them, and I wanted to watch him do it. Do not, I said very low, do not put those babies in your mouth like that. Do not you dare use them. I have changed every diaper and sat through every fever, and I love them past the moon and back, and I will not have them turned into a wedge by a man who needs my house for reasons he has not had the spine to say out loud at this table. The room went dead. Garrett's jaw worked, but nothing came out of it, and for 1 second, just one, his eyes flicked sideways to Lissa's, and hers came up off her plate to meet his, and I saw the whole truth pass between them, silent and fast, the thing they both knew and neither one would name with the children in the room. So I folded my napkin, slow, in half, and then in half again, and I laid it down beside my plate the way my own mother taught me a lady leaves a table she is finished with, and I stood up. The chair legs dragged loud across the floor in all that silence. Garrett came halfway up out of his seat, telling me to lower my voice. And that is the thing of it. I never once raised it, not the whole night. I just looked at the two of them and I said, I am 66 years old. I am not 96. I drive myself. I cook for myself. I pay my own taxes. And I climb my own stairs every night of my life without holding the rail. And I will not sit at this table one more minute while the two people I love most in this world draw up the papers to call me crazy so they can have my house. Wren had gone dead still, her little fork down, her eyes going back and forth between her mama and her grandma, big and wet and frightened. And that right there is what got me. Not the folder, not the clause, that they had sat a child down at this table to watch this happen. I went around behind her and I bent down and I kissed the top of her head and I breathed her in. And I told her grandma loves her more than the whole sky. And then I straightened back up, and I picked up my coat. At the door, Lissa's voice came after me, thin and tight and close to breaking. If you will not work with us, Mom, we are going to have no choice. And I stopped with my hand on the cold knob, and I turned around and I looked at my daughter one last time across that ruined dinner. You already made your choice, sweetheart, I said. I am only just now making mine. And I walked out into the dark, and I did not look back, not even when the porch light clicked on behind me. My heart was going like a fist on a door, but my feet, I will have you know, my feet were dead steady the whole way down to the car. The retaliation did not come as shouting. I almost wish it had, shouting I could have stood in front of. What came instead was quieter and a great deal worse, and it came as a string of small disappearances, and that is exactly how you know a person has gone from angry to organized. Loud people are still hoping. Quiet people have already made up their minds. Monday morning, I drove down to the pharmacy for my blood pressure medicine, same as I do every month, and the girl behind the counter frowned at her screen and tipped her head and said, "It looks like this one got transferred." I said, "Transferred where?" She typed a minute and her face changed and she said, "Actually, it says canceled, at the request of a family contact." I felt my spine go straight as a fence post, but I kept my voice level, pleasant even, because the worst thing you can do in that exact moment is sound like the very thing they are trying to paint you as. "I did not authorize that," I said. "Reinstate it right now and put a note on my file in big letters that says nobody, family or otherwise, touches my prescriptions but me." She did it quick, a little wide-eyed. And you understand what that little maneuver really was. Nobody who cancels a heart medication is worried about your heart. That was somebody building a record. A confused old woman who cannot even keep her own pills straight. One more line for the chart they were writing about me behind my back. Then a few days later, my bank statement did not come. Not the whole mail, just the one envelope. The box latch was shut tight, nothing else missing, just the single piece of paper in my life that showed exactly how much money I had and where it sat. You do not lose one specific envelope. Somebody takes one specific envelope. And then Garrett came by alone, which he had never once done before, and that was its own kind of message. He knocked one time and let himself in before I had even crossed the room, and he sat down on my couch and got right to it. "Lissa is worried about you," he said. "She thinks you are slipping, Marin. You are more forgetful lately, more reactive. You take everything so personal." "I take ownership personal," I said. "That much is true." He gave me a thin little smile that did not get anywhere near his eyes. "You do not want this to get ugly," he said. And then, finally, he said the word out loud, the one they had all been circling for weeks like buzzards over something not quite dead. He said, "If a doctor were to determine I could not responsibly manage my own affairs, well, then they would have grounds to petition the court for temporary conservatorship." "And courts," he said, leaning forward. "Now, courts move real fast when there are young children in the picture. Courts care about stability for the kids. Conservatorship." There it was, set down plain on my own coffee table, right next to the gas station coaster Walt, bought back in 1991. And I understood sitting there that my grandbabies, my sweet Wren and my little Theo, had just been picked up and turned into a crowbar. And then he reached for the cruelest thing of all. I think he had been holding on to it the whole visit, the way a desperate man always keeps his worst card face down until he is dead sure he needs it. He stood up to leave, and at the door, real casual, like he was remarking on the weather, he said, "You keep digging in like this, Marin, and I just want you to be ready for the fact that you might not get to see those kids anymore. We would hate that, truly. But that would be your doing, not ours. I have sat at the bedsides of dying men and held my own face together while their families came apart in front of me. So I want you to know I did not break right then either." I got up, slow, and I went to the sink and I poured myself a glass of water, and I let the sound of it running fill up that whole quiet kitchen. And when I had taken one swallow, I turned around and I said, "You should go now, Garrett." And something in how I said it moved him to the door, and he went. But after that door clicked shut, I stood at the sink a long, long while, both my hands flat on the cold edge of the counter, and I let myself feel every bit of it, the full ugly weight of the thing, all at once. Because you have to feel a thing one time, all the way down to the bottom, before you can set it down and pick your tools back up. They had reached, finally, for the only thing left in this world that could truly break me, those two children, and they had threatened to take them. And in doing it, in showing me how far they were honestly willing to go, they had told me everything I needed to know. So I stopped standing in front of that door Foss had shown me. I went to the phone on the wall, the old one with the cord, and I dialed. And when he answered, I said 3 words. "Let us do it. And I am not going to tell you, even now, even after everything, exactly what those 3 words set into motion. Not yet. Because here is the thing. My own daughter did not know either. Garrett did not know. Not one soul in my family had the first idea what I had just put in motion with 3 words and a steady hand on a kitchen phone. And that the not knowing, the whole quiet head start of it, was the entire reason it was about to work. The buyers gave me 48 hours before they took possession. A kindness, the agent called it. So I spent my last night in that house alone, and I did not spend it crying. I spent it saying goodbye the way you say goodbye to a patient you have nursed a long time and known you were going to lose. With attention, with respect. 1 room at a time. I started in the kitchen, of course. 40 years of mornings in that room. The chip in the tile by the stove where I dropped a cast iron pan the week we moved in, 8 months pregnant with Lissa, and Walt had laughed so hard he had to sit down on the floor. The window over the sink where I had watched that maple go from a sapling to the tall thing that now shaded my husband's resting place. I put my hand flat on the counter and I thanked it. I am not ashamed to say so. A kitchen that has fed a family for 40 years has earned a thank you. Then up the stairs they wanted to save me from. I climbed them slow that night, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel each one. Lissa's old room, where I had sat on the floor through 100 fevers and read the same picture books until the spines gave out. The bathroom where I held her hair back the night of her first heartbreak and told her no boy was worth being sick over, a lesson it turns out neither of us fully learned. And our room, mine and Walt's. I stood in that doorway a long time. I could still find the exact spot on his side of the bed where the mattress remembered him. People think a house is walls and a roof and a number on a deed. It is not. A house is where the people you love have been. And the cruelest part of what my daughter tried to do was not that she wanted to take a building from me. It was that she had stopped seeing all of that, all those years, all those ghosts I loved, and started seeing only square footage. Somewhere along the way, my home had become, in her eyes, an asset. And you cannot grieve an asset, you can only sell it. So that is what I would do. I packed 1 suitcase. I took Walt's watch and his soft-cornered folder of fishing spots. I took the stopwatch and the notebook and my mother's tin of buttons. I left the rest, the furniture, the dishes, the couch where Walt took his last afternoon nap. Because a thing is not the memory, and the memory was coming with me whether they liked it or not. I slept a few hours in the bare master bedroom, and in the morning, dry-eyed and steady, I went to sign my whole life over to a quiet young couple who would never know a single one of its ghosts. And do you know, I was almost glad of that. Let them make their own. For 9 days after that phone call to Foss, I went quiet in a way that must have looked, from the outside, like a woman finally giving up. I did not argue. I did not call. When Lissa texted little messages testing whether I had cooled down, I answered short and calm and let her believe whatever she needed to believe. But inside I was moving faster than I had moved in years, the way you move on the floor when a patient is crashing and everybody else is still figuring out something is wrong. There is a stillness that comes over you in a real emergency. Your hands stop shaking and your mind goes clear and cold, and you just do the next right thing, and then the next one after that. I cannot tell you every single piece of what those 9 days held, but I can tell you the shape of it. A quiet buyer, a cash offer, no bank to slow things down, no public sign staked in my yard for the neighbors and for Garrett to see. Adrian Foss working a telephone like a surgeon works a scalpel, and that folder from Dr. Okafor, dated weeks before any of this began, sitting in a drawer like a loaded answer to a question nobody had thought to ask yet. On the 9th day, late in the afternoon, my phone rang, and it was Lissa, and I could hear Garrett breathing right there behind her shoulder before she even got a word out. She did not say hello. We filed, she said. Her voice was tight and high. We filed the petition this morning, Mom, for the conservatorship. The court date is going to get scheduled soon, so I need you to stop this now. Please, just stop fighting us. And I was standing on my own back porch when she said it, looking out at the maple where Walt is, and I felt something in me go still and settle all the way down, calm as water with no wind on it. I see, I said. You forced this, Mom, she said, and there were tears in it now. We did not want to. You forced it. No, I said, gentle as I could make it. You did. And then I said the thing I had been carrying for 9 days. I need you to know, I said it kindly. I did not say it to wound her. I said, you do not need to worry yourself about the court date, sweetheart. There is nothing for the court to look at. What do you mean? She said. What are you talking about? I mean, I said, that I sold the house. Yesterday morning. It closed. It is done. It is not mine anymore, which means it cannot be transferred to you, and it cannot be put in front of any judge, and there is nothing left inside of it for anybody on this earth to fight over. The quiet that came down the line then was not the quiet of disbelief. It was the quiet of impact. The sound of every board of every plan they had nailed down going out from under them all at once. You did what? Lissa said, and her voice cracked clean in half. And I heard Garrett in the background, sharp and low, put it on speaker, and then his voice came up loud and ugly. You cannot do that. We will challenge it. You were not in your right mind. You were under pressure. That invalidates a sale. My lawyer will tear it apart. And here is where 40 years of watching this exact machine grind through other people's lives finally paid for itself. Because I was ready for him. Every word of it. On what grounds? I said, calm as a Sunday morning. There is no court order. There is no injunction. There was no finding of incapacity, because there was never any finding of anything, because you filed your petition this morning and the sale closed yesterday. You are a day late, Garrett, and you have not one medical determination of anything at all, and I do. I have a full neurological workup, dated weeks ago from a doctor of my own choosing, that says my mind is perfectly sound, so you go right ahead. You stand up in front of a judge and you argue that the woman holding the clean bill of cognitive health was too confused to sell her own house. I would dearly love to watch you try. The silence on the other end had teeth in it now. You did this to spite us, Lissa whispered. No, I said. And this is the part I needed her, above everything, to hear. I did this to protect myself. There is a difference between those two things, and you are going to understand it one day. I hope to God it is before you are my age. You have destroyed our future, she said. No, I said, I have secured mine. And then softer, because she is still my girl. She will always be my girl. I am sorry it had to come to this. I truly am. But I am not going to disappear just because it would be convenient for the people I love. Garrett was still going in the background. This is not over. You will regret this. Where even are you? And I did not answer one word of it. I just took the phone down from my ear and I looked at it a second, my daughter's name still glowing there on the screen, and I ended the call. Not slammed, not thrown. I just pressed the little red circle the way you would quietly pull shut a door you were finally walking out of for good. And then I stood on that porch as the sun went all the way down behind the maple, and I let the dark come in around me. And for the first time in a very long time, not one person on this earth knew where I was about to be. I had a place picked out already. I had had it picked out for weeks. I just had not told one living soul. There is a little town on the Oregon coast, the kind of place that is half lost in fog most mornings, where the ocean just goes on forever, cold and silver and beautiful, and not the least bit interested in your troubles. Walt and I used to talk about it. That was always the dream. Once the shifts were done and the pension kicked in, a little place by the water where he could fish off the rocks, and I could finally just sit still for once in my life. We were 3 years out from it when his heart quit on him on a Tuesday and took the whole plan down with it. So when I needed somewhere to begin again, there was never really any question in my mind. I was going to go live the dream he never got to. I packed his fishing gear into the trunk first, before a single one of my own things. First in. It took them 4 days to find me out there. I had known they would, eventually. Garrett is a great many things, but stupid is not quite one of them, and a man with a debt and a deadline does not just stop. When I opened my door that afternoon and saw the two of them standing down in the courtyard, Lissa out in front, Garrett a few steps back with his hands jammed in his pockets, I was not surprised. I was only tired. I let them in because there are some conversations you have to finish, even when you would give anything not to. And I had raised that girl, and I owed her a door at the very least. And in that small, bright room over the water, the whole thing finally came apart, and showed me what had been sitting underneath it the entire time. Garrett tried his angles first. The sale was questionable. There was undue influence. They could still fight me on it, and I let him talk himself all the way empty, the way you let a fever burn itself through. And when he finally ran out of road, I just said, "There was no influence, Garrett. There was nobody whispering in my ear. There was only me, and a debt that is not mine, and a man named Royce that you owe money you do not have." I watched his face when I'd said the name. I had been waiting a long time for that, and it fell right off the bone. Every bit of the bluster just drained out of him and left something gray and small standing in my rented living room. And that was the moment Lissa started to cry. Not the tight, angry crying from the phone. This was something older and worse, the crying of a person who has been holding a thing too long and too tight and has finally just run out of arms. She sat down hard on the edge of my little couch, and she put her face in her hands, and the truth came out of her in pieces. She had known about the gambling for over a year, the cash going missing first, then the second loan, then the loan that was not from any bank at all, the man named Royce. The phone calls that turned Garrett gray and silent. She had been drowning right there alongside him, and too ashamed to say one word to anybody, least of all to me. To her mother, the nurse, the steady one, the one who fixes things. She had told herself the house was the only way out, that if she could just get me to move along quiet, then everybody would be safe and nobody would ever have to know how far down it had all gotten. And then she lifted her wet face and she said the thing that took the floor straight out from under me. "Mom," she said, "the jacket, Garrett's jacket. The Sunday you found the message from Royce." She stopped. She swallowed. "I left it there. I put it on your chair on purpose, right where I knew you would be sure to find it. And I left his phone in the pocket, face up. I needed you to know what was really happening. And I was too much of a coward to just sit down and tell you to your face. So I thought, if Mom finds it on her own, if Mom sees it with her own two eyes, she will know what to do. Because you always know what to do. And there it is. There is the thing I told you to hold on to, all those chapters back. Her hands shaking at that dinner table, her eyes that would not come up to meet mine. It was never that my daughter had turned against me. It was that my daughter was caught in a riptide with a drowning man's arms wrapped around her, and the one single thing she could still do, the only signal she could send up without going all the way down with him, was to leave a jacket on a chair and pray to God. Her mother was still as sharp as she had always been. She was not betraying me. From down inside that water, leaving that jacket where I would find, it was the only way she could think of to save me. By giving me what I needed to save myself. I sat down beside her on that little couch, and I took her hands, the very same hands, and they were not shaking now, and I held them in both of mine. I did not tell her it was all right, because it was not all of it, not yet. But I said, "You do not have to drown for him, Lissa. You never did. And whatever comes next, you and those two babies have a place at my table for the rest of my natural life." That part is not conditional. That word does not get to come anywhere near my family ever again. Garrett was still standing over by the door. And for just 1 second before he turned away from us, I saw it cross his face, not anger, fear. The plain animal fear of a man who has run clean out of road and knows it, who has just watched the very last thing he was going to use to save himself get pulled out of his reach for good. I will not stand here and pretend I felt sorry for him. But I will tell you that I saw the frightened human being underneath it all. Just for that 1 second, small and cornered and out of options, and then it closed back over, and he said something bitter under his breath, and he walked out into the fog. And my daughter, for the first time in a very long time, did not get up and follow him. It has been a while now, long enough that the fog out my window does not feel lonely anymore. Just quiet, just mine. I found work, if you can even call it that. There is a senior center down by the harbor, and 3 mornings a week I go in and I run an hour they have got written on the calendar as tea and stories, which mostly just means I sit with a room full of old men and old women and I listen. They tell me about dead husbands and runaway sons and the towns they grew up in that are not there anymore. I pour the tea and I hold the hands that want holding, and I remember every single name. 40 years I spent taking care of other people's old age in hospital rooms, watching a system decide who still counted and who did not. And now here I am, doing the same work on my own 2 feet, salt in the air, choosing it freely. The circle closed, and I did not even notice it closing until I was standing right in the middle of it. The only difference now is that nobody gets to tell me I am too old to do the one thing I was put here to do. There is a man there named Harold, 84, sharp as a razor, whose own son tried the same thing on him that my family tried on me. He lost his fight. He signed the couple of things. He tells me about it some mornings, quiet, and I hold his hand, and I do not tell him I got away clean, because that would be cruel, and because getting away clean is not really what happened anyway. I got away. Clean is something else. Clean is for people who never had to choose between their home and their child. Lissa left him. It took her a few months and a great deal of help, but she did it, and she and Ren and Theo are in a small place of their own now, and it is tight, and it is hard, and it is theirs. We talk, not every day, carefully still, the way you walk on a leg that is healing. The house never comes up. It sits there between us like a scar that does not hurt anymore, but you can still see it plain if the light catches it right, and we have both made our peace with letting it just be there. She called me last week, and at the very end of it, quiet, she said, "I thought you would fold, Mom." That whole time. I really did think you would just fold and let us have it. And I told her the truest thing I know. I said, "I almost did, baby. For one night, I almost did." And then I remembered I had spent my entire life refusing to let anybody disappear quietly, and I was not about to start with my own self. Last month, a letter came in the mail, no return address, just a few cramped lines in Garrett's hand. "You were right to protect yourself." I did not write him back. I did not need to. I put it in the drawer with Walt's watch, not as forgiveness, just as a record. A nurse keeps the chart honest, right to the very end. The grandbabies call me on Sundays now. Ren wanted to know why I had to move so far away, and I told her the truth, the kind a child can hold in both hands. I said your grandma went out looking for the ocean, and she found it, and now there is a whole sea right outside her window. And any time you want to come and hear it, your room is sitting right here waiting on you. Theo just wanted to know if I had seen any whales yet. I told him not yet, but I am watching. Every single morning, I am watching the water. People think protecting yourself means raising your voice. It does not. For 38 years, I watched families decide a person was fading the very moment that person became inconvenient. I swore it would never be done to me. And when they tried, I did not argue, I did not beg. I signed one paper on a quiet morning and I drove toward the ocean my husband never got to see. Here is what I learned at 66. Love is not the same as loyalty, and loyalty is not the same as control. My daughter found her way back, not because the house was gone, but because I was not. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is refuse to disappear for their convenience. The tide does not ask permission to come in. Not anymore, and neither do I.